And I just love the story of a guy who has to overcome his fear, find his faith to be all that he's meant to be. And it's the journey I had to go on.
Oh, Nelly, do we have a barn burner today, as Keith Jackson would say on the Impact Show. My friends, we have the one and only Jon Gordon. Yes, that Jon Gordon. You know, the best-selling author, Jon Gordon, the speaker, the man who was number one on my list, the depth chart this year in 2020, my BHAG to get on the Impact Show. Yes, Jon Gordon is today's episode, and you are in for a real treat today. Check out this bio of Jon. Jon Gordon's best-selling books and talks have inspired readers and audiences around the world. His principles have been put to the test by numerous Fortune 500 companies, professional and college sports teams, school districts, hospitals, and nonprofits. He's the author of 20 books, including 8 bestsellers. I've read them all. The Energy Bus, The Carpenter, Training Camp, You Win in the Locker Room First, The Power of Positive Leadership, The Power of a Positive Team, The Coffee Bean with Damon West, and his latest, Stay Positive. Jon and his tips have been featured on the Today Show, CNN, CNBC, the Golf Channel, Fox and Friends, and in numerous magazines and newspapers. His clients include the Los Angeles Dodgers, Campbell's Soup, Dell, Publix, Southwest Airlines, the Miami Heat, the Los Angeles Rams, Snapchat, Clemson Football, Northwestern Mutual, West Point Academy, and on and on and on. Jon's a graduate of Cornell, the Big Red University, and holds a master's in teaching from Emory University. He and his training consulting company are passionate about developing positive leaders, organizations, and teams. And if you haven't listened to his podcast, by the way, Positive You, that's another add to your list podcast that you must listen to. My friends, this was an epic episode, and you're in for a real treat today. And whether you're walking, working out, you're driving, you're getting in an airplane, wherever it is you are right now, buckle up for what is one of the most special episodes you'll ever hear on the Impact Show. And as I try to get in Jon Gordon's head and what makes him tick, please, if you enjoyed today's episode, do us a favor. Please take a picture of the cover, of the image, and please share that on your social media. Share it, tag Jon Gordon, and tag myself, and we'll be sure to share the love so that we can infiltrate the universe with more positivity. Without further ado, let's join in now to the episode with Jon Gordon. All right, my friends, welcome back to another episode of the Todd, Durkin Impact Show, and we have my man, Jon Gordon here. Jon, what's happening?
Todd, when you just start speaking, I just started smiling because I love your energy.
Well, I got to tell you, first off, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being here. You don't know this, but early 2020, you were number one on my BHAG list to get on the podcast because I have been following you, reading your work for many, many years, and I love what you stand for. On all avenues and all levels in your life, as a father, as a husband, as a man of faith, as an author, as a speaker. I'm just thankful that you're here today, brother. So thank you for being here.
I appreciate it, Todd. You know, years ago, people were coming up to me saying, hey, you know, Todd Durkin's recommending your books. And I'm like, I got to check this Todd Durkin out. And I checked you out. I'm like, wow, it was such an encouragement to me back then as a new author that you were reading my books and sharing with others. So I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you, Jon. I believe, and this goes back a ways, and we haven't even talked about this. I believe we have met way back many, many moons ago before you became a best-selling author and everything else in Las Vegas at an event with the Pure Inventions gals. And this was before you were on the map and before I was on the map. And then your book started coming out, and I gifted it. I remember even way back to the LaDainian Tomlinson era, like Training Camp. When that came out, LT and Drew Brees and Justin Peele and Charles Tillman. And I'm like, guys, before you go to training camp, read this book. And they loved it. And ever since that time, all the way up until even when Damon West and you just wrote the new book, The Coffee Bean, I gifted that everyone for Christmas this year. And I just thank you for all the work that you do. And I want to tap in today to right now before we get into, I want to get into inside of your brain as an author and a speaker. But right now, during this very precarious time as we record this here in mid-April. What's it like for you during this COVID-19 time? How are you dealing with it? How are you doing?
Like most people, it's a very surreal experience, right? You wake up every day and you're thinking, is this real? And I have to admit, early on, I didn't do well with it. I'm a pessimistic optimist. So in the beginning, I was feeling really pessimistic. I was down. I was watching the media and the TV shows too much, and I was really getting down. Finally, I said, okay, I can't do this anymore. And then I'm an optimist. I'm an eternal optimist. The hope starts to shine through. I start to believe that the best is yet to come. And that's where I am now. I am really optimistic about our future. I'm optimistic that we're going to get through this, that in the next couple of weeks, the country's going to open back up. It has to. We have to get back to our lives and to society with a greater understanding of what's going on with the virus. We'll have a lot more understanding. There'll be more tests. We will have moved past the critical point where we had to do this, and I appreciate what we had to do. And then we'll move forward with a greater understanding and appreciation, I believe, about what we have in our lives, what we have in society. You know, it's funny, Todd, the other day, someone said, we're going to really miss our families when we go back to work because we're so used to spending so much time with them. And I said, I am looking forward to missing my family.
Amen to that. I can't wait. I think one thing right now that I know I'm focused in on is every day is just having that win the day mentality. I know we've talked about it, but I've heard you talk about it before, but the win the day mentality is like, I can't think too far down the road right now because it's kind of an overwhelming thought. It's like, just today, what can I do to win the day? I know I can work out. I know I can do some reading. I know I could do some prolific outputs on some writing, and I could spend some time with family. But it's like today, I just have to win today. And for me, if I don't get prayer time, I don't get push-ups. If I don't get my workouts in, I'm not the guy I want to be.
I'm walking twice a day.
Yep.
I'm working on my hoop game. I got a hoop court in my front yard,
Nice.
and I'm out there working on my handle, my shot, layups. I'm doing the whole routine, and I'm getting better and better every day. And it's a metaphor for life. I'm reading more. I'm working on a couple of books, and so staying busy with all the things that you can control. You can't control everything in life. We often hear that. We can only control what we control, and you don't want to look too forward into the future, like you said. You want to basically invest in today. I was talking to a Navy SEAL the other day, and he told me the guys who don't make it through Hell Week, the ones who don't make it, are the ones who are looking too far into the future.
That's right.
They're dreaming of it being over, and that dreaming doesn't help them today. The guys who make it are focused on making it to breakfast, and then midday.
It's right.
And then the evening, and then making it to breakfast again. So they have a short-term mentality of, just like you said, not even win the day, win the moment.
So true. So true. It's it. Hey, when you think about it, did you just say that you're writing another book in the midst of all this? Is this prompting you to think about writing another book, or what's your project you're working on during this time?
Well, I'm working on books that have already been written and then fine-tuning and editing for publishing. So we just wrote a book, my wife and I, called Relationship Grit, and it's about sticking together through all the ups and downs. And that was supposed to come out in May, but now we're pushing it to August, September. So we're finalizing that, my wife and I, and then I wrote a book called The Garden, and I'm finalizing that, doing the last minute touches on that. And that's going to come out in June. I'm excited about this book because it's about overcoming fear, stress, and anxiety. And I know your book, Get Your Mind Right, both of these books will be coming out at the right time for people who need this message now more than ever. I'm so worried about all the people that are in isolation, that are dealing with stress and fear about their future, losing their jobs. We have one epidemic, but there's going to be a mental one going forward that's going to really take a toll on people. And so I'm excited about this coming out to have a tool for people to use to be able to get better.
Johnny, you hit the nail on the head right there. I've been saying that, hey, when we get through this, it's time to go on a crusade. For me, it was going to be just in America. Now it's going to be global, because what I'm realizing, there's going to be a pandemic on the other side of this, with depression, with stress, with anxiety, with fear, with suicide, with domestic abuse. Like, the bottom line is this. Right now, we're just sharpening our sword, getting ready for battle. We've got to fight like heck to get through the now, and we got to stay focused on that. But it's going to take a Herculean effort by many, many people to make sure that we do have our minds right and that we can get through this time and come out better on the other side as well. So I can't wait to read your new upcoming books, because I always get them hot off the press, and I love them, and I share them and all that stuff. I want to get into the thought press and get inside your head. 8-time best-selling author, 20 books. Like, step me back. Did you always want to be an author? And how did you get into writing for a living? Was this something that you dreamt of doing when you were a kid, or when you were at Cornell playing lacrosse? Like, how did this all happen?
I never thought I'd be a writer. Only years later, after college, did I realize, okay, I want to have a forum to say what I want to say. So I would actually start writing these articles and send it to the local paper, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I was living in Atlanta at the time, and I was very involved in politics. So I was writing articles about political issues, and I liked having that forum. Only when I was so negative that my wife almost left me, I was that negative, that I found my purpose. Because after she was about to leave, I said, what am I born to do? Why am I here? And writing and speaking came to me. And I knew I wanted to write and speak about positivity because I wanted to be more positive. So I found my life's calling in being a more positive person and doing this work through a journey of being negative. And so it's the negativity that led me to the positive. I had this fear and stress. I lost my job in the .com crash. So what people are going through now, I experienced that in my life, in my marriage. My family was falling apart. I was falling apart. I was not a good father. I was not a good husband. I was struggling mentally and emotionally. And I was allowing the circumstances to define me. In our book, The Coffee Bean, right? I was both the carrot and the egg. And I was getting hardened and bitter and angry. And I was getting weakened by the circumstances and the pressure. And when she threatened to leave, it caused me to look at myself. And I realized I needed to change. And that began this journey of becoming a more positive person. And from there, I started to write and speak about what I was researching, what I was doing, never knowing that I would write a book, The Energy Bus, and I would write all these books.
Go in there a little bit deeper. So you're in this. Your wife threatens to leave you. You know you have to change, but what did you do? How did you make the change? Did you say, okay, I have to start journaling now, or I got to start praying now? Like, what was it that you were doing that actually was the catalyst that allowed you to change?
Best thing I did, I still do it to this day. I started to take a walk of gratitude. While I was walking, I was saying what I was thankful for. You can't be stressed and thankful at the same time. So I was just practicing gratitude. Those walks of gratitude turned into walks of prayer. And so I was a grateful person, then I started to be a prayful person. I wasn't a positive person yet, but the prayer started to change me more and more from the inside out. I wasn't a believer. I was just someone who just started to pray. God, help me. Just help me get this together. Help me get my family together. Help me through this challenging time. And so it was gratitude and prayer, but doing it day in and day out over time. You weed the garden of your mind. You feed the garden of your mind. Do it on a daily basis.
Preach it. Yep.
A week starts to look pretty good. A month looks magnificent. A year, wow, this garden looks incredible. Now for me, it's been over 15 years of doing this on a daily basis. My mind is a whole lot different. My spirit is very different. And how I see the world and how I attack the world is very different. So that is what I did initially. But I would start reading, I was walking and praying, and I became a more compassionate person to my wife. And I moved from me to we. So I moved from focusing on myself and being a narcissist to seeing how I could help her. And my mission became, how can I serve others? God, I'm here for you, God. Like, use me to do your will and your purpose.
Absolutely.
Help me help you in many ways, like the Jerry Maguire moment, right?
And now you're doing 2 gratitude walks a day. And I love that. One thing I always say with relationships is like, you talk about a narcissist is, how do you say, what can I do to help you or serve you versus what can that person do to me? Because they're not the man or, the woman that you want them to be. It's like, how can I change? And that's a hard question. Like, what can I do to be a better man or better husband to help my wife on that? So I think that's awesome. And John, I love
the more I love my wife, the more I love my life. Not happy wife, happy life. The more I love my wife, the more I love my life. The more I serve her, the more I'm here for her, the more I feel better about myself. And that makes our relationship just a whole lot better. I'm not looking for her to make me happy. I'm not even focusing on what she's doing for me. I am here to serve her. And it didn't come back initially when I started doing that, but for years later, it comes back.
So you get through this, your relationship gets saved, so to speak. How does it go from that to then writing your first book?
So I started a newsletter. I was writing a positive tip every week. I had 5 subscribers to my newsletter. My mother, my brother, best friend from college.
Wow.
They were getting it whether they liked it or not. And as people started to share it, more and more people started to read it. I started to get a following. From there, a small publisher out of Atlanta saw my newsletter and said, hey, I want to publish your book. And so I didn't have a book that I was going to publish, but started thinking about what I could write. And that began the journey of writing my first book, which was not Energy Bus, but my first 2 books, I don't really talk about now because Energy Bus, I really consider my first book. And these other 2 books I did, one was called Energy Addict. Another one was 10-Minute Energy Solution. And they were more how-to self-help books. They had my picture on the cover. And ever since those 2 books, I've never put my picture on a cover. And all my books without my picture do amazing. So I don't put my picture on a cover. That's just me. Like I think other people should, but for me, for some reason, the books have done better without me on the cover. And so for me, that began this journey of then looking to write more books. But I did the Energy Addict, 10-Minute Energy Solution. They sold okay, not great. And then when I wrote the Energy Bus, it was rejected by over 30 publishers. And that book came to me on a walk one day while I was walking and praying, 2006. And it came to me, boom. And I had the story, I had the vision, and I just started writing it. And I wrote that book in about 3.5 weeks.
Wow.
And so I felt like this was something special, something divine. And that book would begin this journey as a writer of writing fables now. And it changed my life because other 2 books didn't do great, but the Energy Bus really took off.
Yeah. And then, Energy Bus for kids as well. Guys, if you have not read the Energy Bus, read it. And then if you love the gifts to kids, the Energy Bus for Kids is another amazing book also. So read that. So nowadays, you're an author, you speak, you have the podcast, Positive You. Out of all those professional roles, do you have a favorite? Like, I love when I'm in writing time or when I'm up on front doing a keynote to, one of these great companies that you work with, teams you work with. Do you have a role that you really, really relish?
Such a great question. I would say I'm a writer first. And so I prefer writing the most. Like I am a writer first, a speaker second. I speak what I write about. I only started speaking because they said I had to get my book out there. And so I really love books and writing these ideas. It's painful at first, as you know, when you first start writing a book. Very painful to go through that process. You feel like you're giving birth in a sense. I've never given birth, but it's very uncomfortable. My wife's like, you have no idea what it's like to give birth. But for me, it's this uncomfortable feeling. And then as you start to write it and the book starts to take shape, you start to feel better and better. When you're done, it's like this incredible release of what you created and shared. And when people start reading it and benefit from it, that's the greatest feeling in the world. Like I know that's my calling. Like I'm a really good speaker. I don't think I'm like the greatest speaker. I see pastors who are the greatest speakers. And so for me, I do a lot of corporate gigs. I do a lot of big events. I get hired to speak a lot. And I do enjoy that. I have to admit, I do enjoy speaking, meeting people, but I am happiest when I'm writing. I've learned to love the art of speaking and get better at it and grow in it and then make a difference with it. But when I'm speaking, I want people to read my book. Like in the speech, I want them to then read the book because that's where the greatest change happens. I don't think we get impacted as much by a talk than as by a book. I think a book is what impacts us the most.
So let's go there. I want to get inside Jon Gordon's head right now. Jon Gordon, the writer. Tell me about the process of how you do this. I mean, you've got these fables. Your writing is simple, but it's profound. And I'm going through all these books for a decade, and it always has so much life wisdom in it. Our kids, my wife, we read all these books. Where do you get your ideas? How do you then turn it into this fable? And then eventually they become bestsellers. So bring me into the head of Jon Gordon from like the seed, the origin, into like sitting your butt down, getting some butt glue and going.
Well, let's just look at the garden, for instance. So that book is going to be coming out. I had the idea of these 5 Ds, the 5 Ds that evil uses to attack us. And those 5 Ds are doubt, distortion of lies, discouragement, distraction, and division. And so those 5 Ds are really the enemy's game plan to sabotage us, our lives, our marriage, our communities, our country. So on a walk one day in Chicago, this came to me. These 5 Ds just came. So then I thought, okay, I wrote a newsletter about these 5Ds. I put it out there. I've been talking about it. People are really resonating with it. Sent it to Eric Spoelstra, sent it to other coaches I know, professional athletes, leaders. I'm like, these are the 5Ds you have to watch out with your team. They're like, man, these are great. I'm going to use this with my family too. So these 5Ds, no matter what religion you are, they really make sense. They're universal principles. So then from there, around November this year, I started thinking, I need to write a story about these 5Ds. And then the garden just came to me. And it's really a battle of good versus evil. Think about it. Harry Potter and Black Panther, Superman, Wonder Woman. They're all about the battle of good versus evil. Those stories resonate so much with us because that's the battle in our soul is the battle versus good versus evil. That's the narrative of the universe. We look around the world, you can see it's this battle versus good versus evil. Look at the virus, right? We have this virus that's trying to kill us, and then we have these antibodies and immune system that attacks it to try to save us.
That's right.
So it's the ultimate battle all the way down to the biological level. So I said, let me write this story about the garden, about these 5Ds. And then I had a vision. Boom. Oh, it's two teenagers going through a lot of fear, stress, and anxiety. It's Mr. Irwin, who is named after Erwin McManus out of Los Angeles, and the pastor there, because he's the one who taught me about the battle for identity. Because these D's attack you in the place of your identity, of who you are. And so I had that. And then I started to write the story about these two teenagers who learn these lessons from Mr. Irwin. And he has a garden in his backyard, and it's a really incredible garden. And he teaches them the lessons in his backyard while he's using the garden as a metaphor to explain what's going on. And so it's just back and forth lessons. So that ultimately became the story. So I always get these ideas, a vision, and then figure out a practical way to teach the lessons. And as I start writing, then the gems come out, the ideas come out. That's when, as you know, you're a writer, these incredible insights come to you. You don't take credit for them. They just come. And that's what becomes the book. Same thing happened with the Carpenter. Same thing. I had this idea that it's about caring more, that if you care more, you'll produce greatness. And so that began the genesis of the idea. A carpenter came to my house. It was during the Great Recession, and he was jamming and slamming. He was so busy. And I said, why are you so busy? Like, other carpenters are not doing well right now. He's like, because I love what I do. I care about what I do. And I knew, okay, that's a book right there. And so then I started to tell this story about a guy who's struggling and collapses, and now he has to learn these lessons from a carpenter. All right, how does the carpenter teach him the lessons? Oh, he saves him on a bike ride when he, on a run, actually, when he collapses, and he saves him. And then how does he meet him again? All right, you got to come up with that as part of the story. And then he starts teaching the lessons. And then love, serving, care came in as the greatest strategies. You got to love, you got to serve, you got to care. Before you do that, you got to design your masterpiece. Then you got to build with optimism. And then you got to practice generosity to truly be great and to serve others. So those became the principles of the book as I started writing.
So when you're writing these, do you get this idea and then you sit down and almost like manically you write a book in 3.5 weeks? Or are you pretty systematic and you're like, okay, I write best between 8 a.m. and 11 a.m. I get 3 hours a day. I got 2,500 words I'm going to hit. Or do you get it all out on paper and you crush it for, a 3 to 6 week period? What is that process like for you?
I don't have number goals. I don't have page goals. None of that. I get up in the morning and I start writing. I'll have a framework of what I want to do, and I'll write sort of down a general outline. But even then, I don't really sometimes have the outline. Sometimes I have just the first few pages, and I'll just have that, and I'll start. Then I go take a walk. I go exercise. I work out. I do my thing. Come back, write a little bit more. By midday, I'm done. Then that night, I'll read what I wrote, and then get up the next morning, and then begin again. And so it's a process where every day I'm writing a little bit in the morning, taking the walk, writing a little bit more, taking a break, checking what I wrote at night. I'll have new ideas at night when I read it and I edit, and then I'll write some of these ideas down. In the morning, I start again. And so over time, within a few weeks, the book starts to write itself. And so that's what happens. And the Energy Bus started with like 3 principles, 3 rules. And then as I wrote it, each rule led to the next. And then the story starts to tell itself. The characters start to speak for themselves, which is very strange, right? But it starts to happen. And then you have the book. The Power of Positive Leadership and The Power of a Positive Team are not fables, but those books were written the same way in terms of that I had the framework of what positive leaders do and what makes great leaders great. So I had my outline, and then I just had to write in each chapter different examples, principles, and stories to explain the concepts and the principles that I was trying to share in the book. So it was very different to write those books, but still in many ways the same way of writing, taking a break, editing, and the process for me is the same.
So Jon, this morning before I came on with you, I told my kids that I was going to be interviewing you for the podcast, and they were so excited. And my son Brady, I have a 17, 15, and 12-year-old. My son Brady, who's 15, he's an avid reader. He gets all pumped up. He says, "Dad, ask Jon this question." And this is a good question. I'm asking you on behalf of Brady. He said, when Jon's finished writing a book, I know it's a great feeling, but how does he take it from good to great? Like, how does he put the finishing touches on a book? I'm like, that is a great question, Brady. I'm going to ask him that because, okay, you have a good book and you really like it. You want to get it out. But how do you take the finishing touch and say, here's my masterpiece. Here's a great book. What do you do?
You send it to friends and you get their input. You send it to some people who you share your work with. You get their ideas. You get their feedback.
Yep.
You get some of your publishers' ideas and their feedback. Then after that, the book goes to the publishing process. And when it comes back to you, then you read what you wrote. Now it's sometimes been like a month later.
Right.
So now you're reading it with fresh ideas. And as you're reading it, you're now making some edits as you go through it. I'm sometimes adding paragraphs in that part, at that part of the journey, adding paragraphs, sections, new ideas, taking some things out. So for me, that's when that happens as it comes back from the publisher. It goes back to the publisher again, and then they do the nice typeset pages and so forth. And then you get back again what it looks like in terms of book form. And now I'll make some more edits, some more changes. I may get a new insight, a new idea as that happens. I'll make some changes. It goes back again. And then you're like, okay, this is the book. For my wife and I, we did Relationship Grit. She saw this process. She saw how it changed a little bit. We took some things out. We added some things. And she saw how, wow, we made it a lot better through this process. I said, yep, we weren't just settling for the first draft. You do multiple drafts, tell Brady. Multiple drafts makes you better. But for me, it's when it comes back from the publisher. For other people, they do it as part of their process before it goes to the publisher. For me, it works best when it's coming back.
I love it. I love it. And this was a consensus question from everyone. Ask Jon, and this is going to put you on the spot. Do you have a favorite book that you read?
Yes.
Oh, really? Wow. I was like, no, he's going to say all of them. What's the favorite one?
Yeah. My favorite is Training Camp. Training Camp. Would the best do better than everyone else? Why? I was a running back.
Yeah.
Martin Jones, who in my view, in my mind, looked like Maurice Jones-Drew, was modeled after him. Yeah. Love Maurice. He actually read the book. I met him one time and he told me he loved my book. I said, it's funny, it was modeled after you. He's like, really? He's like, where's my royalties?
That was the first book I read from you, and I loved it so much. And then I read, obviously, all the other ones, too. So I can see why.
Trying to make it into a movie now. So we got a script that is written, working on that to make it into a movie. And I just love the story of a guy who has to overcome his fear, find his faith to be all that he's meant to be. And it's the journey I had to go on, had to overcome all this fear I had, find my faith. Amen. To be who I was meant to be. And so for me, that story, and when Coach Ken and Martin are in his office and Martin finds his faith, I had so many men email me, said it brought him to tears in that moment. And so for me, that's just a really special book. Energy Bus, by far the most popular, right? The most popular. People say The Carpenter is my best book, but Training Camp is my favorite.
You know what my favorite is?
I was wondering.
My favorite book, and again, I've read Training Camp, love it. Energy Bus. I love Coffee Bean with Damon West. Damon West, heck, he came out and spoke for my mastermind in February. And man, what he had a mic drop. I mean, he is an amazing man. Great story. I love the story, how you found him through Dabo Sweeney and all of that. But my favorite book out of all of them, Hard Hat.
Hard Hat.
Hard Hat. We not only are a football family, we're a lacrosse family. And there was something about that book that pulled my emotional heartstrings. The story of George Biardi. And I think it's because of your desire to keep his legacy alive. I felt like I was a lacrosse player at Cornell, and I felt like that book, 21 Ways to Be a Great Teammate. I'm a team guy. And I asked the same thing to the kids, and they love hard hat. So that'd have to be mine. And I love training camp too. I love it. But hard hat, man, that to me was special.
It's funny because I had to write that book. I didn't have a choice. Like I knew I needed to tell his story, and all the proceeds go to his foundation. When I started writing that book, I was going to give half of the proceeds to his foundation. As I started to write it and research him and learn more about him and talk to his family, I knew that I couldn't make a dime off of his life. This was the guy who was the ultimate teammate who served and sacrificed, and he made me a better person writing that book. And I'd love to make that into a movie as well, and give all the proceeds to his foundation as well. I never want to make a dime off his life, but his family at this point does not want to make it into a movie. They just still feel the pain of what happened, even though it was 2004, that long ago. They still feel the pain of that. It's still painful. But they, at first, were not happy about me writing it, even though they gave me permission. And now they're really thrilled that the book was out there and that people are benefiting from it and reading it. And what a legacy. This young man who was such a great teammate is now influencing all these young kids around the world because of his story and the way he lived. And it's just such a special story. And his name was Mario St. George Boiardi. St. George. I mean,
interesting.
His story is like epic, and people still have 21 sightings wherever they go. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I had to tell his story. I was compelled. And I didn't know how I was going to tell the story. I was like, how am I going to write this book? And then walking on the beach one day, I had it. Boom, I'm going to share his story. And then I'm going to share 21 ways to be a great teammate because he was number 21. And then I knew how to write this book. I had a framework. And once I had the framework, I started writing it.
I'm seeing a theme here, folks. I'm seeing a theme of walk more. Because the more Jon walks, the more books are coming out of his head. And this is a good thing. And I'm going to ask one more question on books. And I'm going to end it with just a couple habits I want to get into with you, Jon. But books. If someone out there, if there's a young kid who maybe wants to write a book someday, or maybe it's an adult who has I always talk about has a life worth telling a story about, and they have no idea where to start. How do you start writing a book? Like, a kid says, during this quarantine time, or I want to write a book. What would you advise them to do?
Don't worry about getting published. So often they think about getting published before they actually even write the book. So they don't even write it because they don't know how to find a publisher. No, just sit down every day and start writing. Create an outline. Decide what story you want to tell. What are the core lessons? Think of this: principle, story, application. Share the principles, tell stories, and then how does it apply to the audience? You do that and you can write a book. Your framework should be the principles that you want to share. Start with your story. What do you know about as a writer? What do you know about as a human being? And write about the things you care about. For me, every book I write, I say, if I die tomorrow, what would I want to share? What's important now to share in this book? What lessons do I want to pass on to my kids? And that begins and becomes the book. So it starts with that. Every book I write, what am I meant to share? What's the core message of this book? A lot of times we have 3 books in our head and we try to write all 3 at once. No, just write the one book that you're meant to write and make that your core message.
I love it. I love it. I want to just shift gears for a second and talk about, I love studying high performers, and all the high performers I've had the opportunity to work with. I look at habits. And you just talked about sitting down and writing something every day and not worrying about where it's going to go, but that habit of doing something. What are some of the best habits that you do on a regular basis? I know you've already talked about, exercising and walking, but if you say, hey, here's some high performance habits that I do, and maybe it's your morning routine, maybe it's evening routine or during the day, what would be a few habits that you do that you think are worthy of mentioning today?
I'm going to have a series of great habits. My wife says I am very disciplined in the way that I live my life. She's not, right? But I eat the right foods. I eat really healthy. I go to bed each night trying to get 8 hours sleep. When I get up and I'm writing, I get up and I write. If I'm not writing a book at that time, I get up and I go exercise. I do push-ups, sit-ups, chair squats 3 times a week, every other day, right? Every other day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, boom, boom, boom. So I'm physically fit. Training my body, training my mind, my spirit. I'm listening to sermons, I'm reading books, and I'm getting encouraged by podcasts like yours and so forth. So I'm always fueling my mind and emotions and my spirit with great things. And so really it's a very simple life for me. I don't really live a very complicated life. I show up, I do what I do best. I write, I speak, I encourage others. I know that's what I'm here to do, encourage others. And then I take care of my body. I eat right. I don't drink. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. Never done a drug in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do any of that. And Damon and I laugh about that, right? Damon West. So I just live a pretty much clean life. And I would say that that's probably my strong suit, is that my purpose is greater than my challenges. So I know why I am here. And when you know your why, you will know the way. And you won't let obstacles get in the way. And I would also say I have a lot of grit, right? And that grit is driven by love. If you love it, you will work hard to be great at it. If you don't love it, you'll never work at it. So you got to love what you do. Pavarotti was asked about his incredible discipline as an opera singer. He said, people think it's discipline. It's not discipline, it's devotion. He's so devoted to his craft that drives his discipline. And I think so often you see it, people try to be disciplined, but they don't really love what they're doing. So that discipline is like they're basically climbing uphill every day. They're swimming against the current all the time. No, bring the love to it, and then the discipline will be easy. I'm sure with Drew Brees, he doesn't have to be worried about getting up in the morning. He doesn't have to push himself too hard because he loves what he does. And so there'll be days where he doesn't feel like he wants to do it. But for the most part, that love will drive his discipline to be his best. The greatest athletes in the world, we see them. There's a love that drives the discipline, and that's what makes them great.
Man, I love that. I'm hearing a lot of D's. You went from the 5 D's before: doubt, distortion, discouragement, distraction, and division. And now we've got discipline, devotion. I'm hearing a lot of divinity. This is like the counter. I love it.
Yeah, well, on the other side of that, right? The 5 D's, we can counter it with
exactly
our destiny. So I always say that the 5 D's, though, the way to counter it is actually the 4 C's, which is communicate, connect, commit, care. Communicate, connect, commit, care. Those are in the power of positive leadership. That's what makes a great leader great. They're in the power of a positive team. It's what makes a great team and relationship great. So those 4 C's then allow you to avoid the 6th D. The 6th D, if the 5 D's take hold, the 6th D becomes destruction, defeat in a team, or in a marriage, divorce, right? If you allow those 5 D's to take hold in a marriage where you feel divided, where there's discouragement, where there's distractions, that could lead to divorce in a marriage or defeat in a team. So we overcome that with the 4 C's, and then that leads to our 7th D, which is our destiny.
Man, it's a lot of D's and
It's all in the garden. I share all the D's in the garden.
I can't wait to read it. It's funny. I have the 4 C's to success, and one of them I have is conditioning. So I have commit, connect, condition, and create. And conditioning is of your body, mind, and soul. So how do you condition your body? How do you condition your mindset? How do you condition your spirit on a regular basis, a daily basis? So I love your 4 C's. Hey, Jon, what's next? What's next for you? I know you've got your book coming out. What's kind of on your agenda here as we get through this very precarious time, and hopefully we get back into quote normalcy pretty soon. But what's next for Jon Gordon?
Well, on the personal front, we're gonna have a date night in the living room tonight.
Nice. This is good.
We're gonna have a movie night, watching the game. Watching a movie in the TV room.
Yeah.
Groundhog Day every day, like what
every day.
But all joking aside, and in the long run, I'm excited about the garden coming out. Relationship grit. We know that a lot of relationships right now, in all honesty, are struggling because what's going on. There's going to be a lot of pressure on marriages. There's going to be a lot of division. There's going to be a lot of discouragement going on. And so my wife and I, we have this hope that relationship grit is really going to help a lot of couples stay together. And they're going to need this book more than ever after this is over. And I think it's going to be over in the next month or two. I think we'll get back to normal, but they're going to need that. And they're going to need your book. And then the garden I'm really excited about, again, because I just feel like, again, I wasn't planning on this book coming out at this time with all that's going on, but the fact that it is shows you that, okay, there's a bigger plan, because I was sitting around, we wrote Relationship Grit, finished Christmas Day. And then Christmas Day, I thought, should I write about the 5 Ds? And boom, the garden came to me, and I wrote it and finished it January 8th before I went back on the road to speak again. So this book was meant to be out for a time such as this. So I'm excited about that. We're doing leadership training, Power of Positive Leadership. So we had 4 events that we've had to cancel because of all this, but now we're doing a virtual event. So we're adapting, innovating, and growing, which I tell everyone they have to do right now. We got to survive, Got to make sure we keep our companies and our businesses alive. We got to advance, like in March Madness. You got to advance. You grow, you improve, you get better. That's how you advance forward. We have to adapt and innovate so that way we can then, the last word is thrive on the other side of this change. So we're doing that as a company too. We're adapting, innovating, power positive leadership training, doing that. And I started a coaching program where I'm now coaching people once a month, and it's a group coaching, and it's Jon Gordon coaching, and I'm doing that every month, and I'm enjoying that, pouring into people doing that.
Where can people find out more about that program and all that you're doing?
You can go to jongordoncoaching.com, Jon Gordon Coaching. Website is just Jon Gordon, Jon Gordon, and Twitter, Instagram at Jon Gordon 11, Jon Gordon 11.
Okay, so follow him, folks. You're going to want to follow everything he's doing. You're talking about Positive You on his podcast, his Twitter, his coaching programs, his speaking, his writing. He is impacting the world everywhere he goes.
Todd, I forgot what I'm excited about. I'm interviewing you for Positive You, so that's something I'm excited about. I'm fired up for that.
I can't wait to be on the show. Last question for you. Hey, this is the Impact Show, and to me, Impact's about legacy. Jon, what do you hope that someday your life, you want other people to say about you? What do you want other people to say about Jon Gordon?
It's so simple. Like Tom Brady said, he doesn't care about his legacy and all that. I don't care about my legacy. Here's what I want. I have this vision that when my kids are older and I'm gone, they'll meet people that will say, hey, your dad's book made a difference in my life. Or I saw your dad speak and he impacted my life. For me, that's it. I'm gone and people are telling my kids about the impact I had.
Man, I love it. Folks, you can see why I wanted Jon Gordon on the Impact Show. This has been a dream of mine for a long time. And Jon, I can't thank you enough for taking time to be here today and impact so many people. So read one of those amazing books he's already written, or read one that's coming up here. The Garden's coming up in June. Relationship Grit's coming out as well. So follow Jon, again, Jon Gordon 11, most places, or check out his website. Look at his social media. But Jon, once again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being on the show today.
Thanks, Todd. Appreciate you.